Welcome everyone to another episode of A County for Old Cars, and this morning you join me as I take Tess, my 1967 2-litre Triumph Vitesse, to visit a former American or USAAF airfield at a village called Debach, which is D-E-B-A-C-H. And Debach is located just a few miles outside Woodbridge. This was an important base for the Americans in 1943. It was a base for heavy bombers, and today they're holding an open day where they've been able to open up some of the surviving buildings on the old airfield, which I should say is now largely an industrial estate, but the control tower is still there, and there are a number of ancillary buildings associated with the American Air Force that remain, including the parachute store. And I'm going to go and have a little look. I'm expecting to see a lot of military vehicles and a lot of reenactors dressed in correct period uniform and dress. I am going to stand out from the crowd because I'm not dressed appropriately in any way. But I thought it'd be interesting to go along and have a look. I think it's also worth saying that the Americans had a huge impact on this part of East Anglia during the war, and indeed in the west of Suffolk, at Milton Hall and Lakenheath, they continue to have a large influence on social culture and have really been an integral part of Suffolk society since 1943. But in this part of Suffolk, their legacy is remembered in so many different ways. Obviously, as you've seen with some of my films around Parham Airfield, the buildings from the airfield remain as a sort of testimony to what was there. But an example of how important the Americans were to people in Suffolk came home to me about a week ago when I met a remarkable woman who is in her 97th year, and she grew up and in fact spent most of her life living in Leiston, where there was a fighter base. Now the airfield outside Leiston was home initially to the American Thunderbolts and then later to the P-51 Mustangs. But this woman was explaining to me that as a little girl, when she was at school in Leiston, she and her friends used to make a point of racing from school at the end of the school day up to the airfield to look at the aircraft on their hard stands. And apparently what happened was each of her friends adopted an aircraft and they named their aircraft and in a sense sort of took ownership of each one. And I think while they weren't known to the pilots, they were certainly known to one or two of the air crews, particularly where the hard stands were close to the perimeter of the airfield and the kids could sort of get up close. But the children would race there every day to make sure that their aeroplane had come back from whatever mission. And of course they would be woken each morning or each operational morning, by the sound of these squadrons of fighters taking off and in many cases heading north to Great Yarmouth to rendezvous with the bomber groups in order to escort them across to Europe. And the kids would want to know that their aircraft had made it back safely. And she was explaining to me the sense of personal loss and grief that the children felt each time one of their adopted aircraft didn't come back. And it is something that has stayed with her all her life. And at 97, her description not only of the process of leaving school and sort of running with their sort of hearts in their mouths up to the airfield, but the feelings of anticipation and then grief if on occasions they got there and found that their aircraft hadn't returned. My goodness, it's a convoy and a half. And it left a huge impression on me, this particular conversation, because it reminded me of just how personal these things were to the people of Suffolk, and how this legacy, these memories, remain. And so where we're going today, which is, as I say, a bomber base, the planes that would have flown out of Debach, which I think I'm right in saying were B-24s, the Liberators, owed a lot of their safety and security to the fighter base at Leiston and the pilots of the Thunderbolts and later the Mustangs that accompanied them initially across the North Sea, but as the Mustangs were fitted with drop tanks all the way to Germany towards the end of the war. But I kind of felt that I really owed it to my conversation with this wonderful woman to come and have a look for myself at this commemorative open day at the United States Army Air Force Base of Debach, and here we are. So let's go and see what we've got. So this is the 400th and 93rd bomb group we're going to visit, and as you can see, a large part of it has been turned over to industry, but there are parts of the old runway and perimeter track which still remain, and we'll be having a little sort of look at that in a minute. Sadly, there's no flying from this base anymore, largely because of the pylons which emerged in the 1960s across here. But airfield is already filling up with 1 or 2 classic cars, so people have had a similar idea to me to come along and bring their old cars to visit. I think we'll pull off onto the grass. What we're driving on at the moment, as you can probably tell, is part of a perimeter track. Anyway, let's just see how we get on. So you join me at Debach Airfield itself, and behind me you can see the control tower. We're going to have a little wander along the line of vehicles here, including the military trucks. Anyone who's seen my channel before knows that my knowledge of military vehicles is pretty limited, so I'm sure if you can identify these trucks, you'll let me know in the comments. But we'll have a little walk through and see what we discover. So the first one we've got is labelled with a 493rd bomb group designation, and this is reflected by a little moniker here which says Helton's Hellcats, and this refers to the bomb group's commanding officer. But fantastic patina. And then, because I can read, I can see this one's a GMC, and from the 397th, sorry, the 379th bomb group, and obviously part of the engineers unit. We'll have a little look inside. You can see the workbench with the vices, grinder, and there's a pillar drill there. And then a gas tanker. And I guess the airfields must have been absolutely crawling with vehicles like this for refueling aircraft and other vehicles. I rather like the open cockpit here. I guess the important thing was to be able to jump out quickly and jump back in, so presumably these were largely confined to working on sites like the airfield. Then we've got a blood bank truck here, another GMC vehicle. There's some fantastic period posters, including one at the far end, a recruitment poster for nursing staff. Then we've got one here which looks like it's got a pump on the back, so and then I'm interested in the ambulance that we see here, because I could be wrong, but this is reminiscent of the ones that appeared in the TV series MASH, used in the Korean War,
whether they were a derivation or not. This one's again designated as a 493rd bomb group. Then an important part of any bomb group, a transporter for the bombs themselves. And then this little tug. So the sign behind the steering wheel reads W.F. Herald and Co. Chicago. And I guess there must have been trains of these trundling backwards and forwards across the airfield from the bomb dumps to the hard stands. And then a ubiquitous Willis Jeep. So taking a look at the classic cars in front of us, the first one which catches my eye is this wonderful standard Vanguard. I'm just close in on the badges here, which you'll recognise as a standard crest, later adopted of course by standard Triumph. We've got a wonderful array of club badges, and this one dates from 1955, so this superseded the Beetle back. Beautiful colour, and again we'll try and have a look in the inside. Yeah. So column change, bench seat, so 3 up front and 3 in the back. But something of a rarity. I can remember when these cars came out and they were particularly sought after, and this is the Mark II Cavalier Cabriolet, and this looks showroom fresh. It's absolutely beautiful. Including the interior. I'll just give you a sort of an overview there. I always thought that this was an attractive design, certainly for me much more appealing than the Cavaliers that came afterwards. And then just moving round, we've got a wonderful 6-cylinder Ford Zodiac with a vinyl roof and interesting badge here, the Eastern Counties Motor Club badge. Fantastic tail fins on these too. BMC Morris 1100, sort of smoke grey, very pretty, and this one's actually up for sale. but a lovely period correct colour. And then next to that, this wonderful duotone Triumph Herald 1200, which I think is a sort of conifer over cactus, or cactus over conifer combination. Lovely interior here, and pristine wooden dashboard on this one. One of the things which is particularly interesting is the fact that this still has its original carpet, and these are unobtainable. I'd love to be able to get some original carpets for my Vitesses, but most of them sadly sort of rotted away, so very rare to find one in this sort of original condition. Another rarity is this Armstrong Siddeley Star Sapphire, and Armstrong Siddeley is a company that we don't really sort of recognise nowadays, but in a sense they were the sort of direct competitors for companies like Daimler and Jaguar, but fabulous flowing lines, and particularly you can see the way the wings sweep down below the doors, almost sort of reminiscent of the kind of running board days of the pre-war cars. And the bonnet badge on this one has this fantastic sphinx. I'll just give you a little bit of a close-up on this one here. Yeah, that's wonderful. And then another car which I think was also part of BSA was the Lanchester, and this one's a very smart little coupe with a trunk on the back. So we come round. Hi there. Yeah, this is enchanting, and it's got the pram irons to the coupe roof, and then a sunroof. On this side we've got a V8 Pilot, so this is Ford's famous V8. This is absolutely beautiful, wonderful colour scheme, and I particularly like the white wall tyres on this one. Have a little look at the engine bay. So again you can see we're looking at the flathead V8. And in spite of the size of the engine, there's still plenty of room to get in and work on it. And next to that we've got this very smart Sunbeam Alpine. I think this is a Series 4 probably, with the wire wheels. Very rare Ford Zodiac convertible, and this one has the soft top, which has 3 positions, so it can be sort of put into a coupe de ville position or folded all the way back. And interesting period accessory, which is the spotlight, which you can use for finding house numbers at night. Beautiful upholstery inside, and wonderful colour scheme. I'm guessing an import from possibly South Africa, so this is a Cortina pickup or ute. And then we've got a Morris Minor 2-door, lovely shade of green. This is I think one of the early A-series 1000cc engines. Very smart Porsche 944 turbo here. I really like the colour scheme of this one, and MGB. Again, nice to see one in a shade of white. So many of these cars are sort of either British Racing Green or red, and so seeing one in this colour is perfect. Particularly like the steering wheel and the sort of big MG Boss in the middle. Something later, so this is sort of about 1980, Mark II 1.6 or 1600 Ford Escort Sport. But this sort of marks the turn away from chrome trim to matte black, and again we see that again with the Ford Fiesta. That's a fetching shade of yellow. More modern classics, we've got a pair of MGFs here. I'll just have a quick look in the interior because these are nicely finished cars, complete with the sort of wood trim panels, white dials, and yeah, this is beautifully finished. Again, as we were saying, MGs tend to come in British Racing Green or red, and these two are no exception. Then we've got a very smart rubber bumpered MG, one that is a familiar sight. It's this fantastic 6-cylinder Vauxhall Cresta, and that is just beautiful in its duotone. Very smart businessman's Mercedes, two-door coupe, beautiful lines, understated elegance. And understated is probably not a word that one would use for the Chevy Bel Air that's in front of us here. This is a striking car, fabulous sort of tomato shade of red with this sort of contrasting ivory colour scheme. Extraordinary details on the bumpers and the hood ornaments. So we're going sort of close and have a look. So I've just been given permission to have a look inside, and this is a palace of colour. It's just fantastic. Something from the 50s jet age, and I'm just looking at the detail of the dashboard. It's again reminiscent of a sort of styling of jukeboxes of the day. But again, the detail of the rear tail lights is again something sort of almost Art Deco in the way these are formed and ribbed, and again you've got the Chevrolet logo sort of set into the rear. Yeah, just stunning. And we're really looking at that period between the sort of 80s and 90s, this understated, elegant sort of Teutonic over-engineering, something that seems to be missing from contemporary German cars nowadays. But yes, you can sort of imagine the kind of house where these two might have been a his and hers pairing in the double garage, just Austin. And I love the detail here on the badges with the Austin logo, the flying wheel. So this is an Austin 8, and you can see the badge, the club specific badges here. Again, wonderful enamelled badges, like the Royal Automobile Club Association badge with the enamel Union Jack. So this is just gorgeous. So suicide doors, so you can get in and out elegantly if you're wearing a skirt, and yeah, fabulous dashboard, and actually plenty of head height. So this is a time when men and women wore hats in cars, but yep, it looks very comfortable. And then you've got the sort of the last vestiges of the running boards from this era, but it's beautiful. Next to us, a later Austin from 1950, so the A40. So this is the Farina styled Austin, which was kind of a sort of forerunner of the modern hatchback. Anyone who follows the Goodwood revival and the St Mary's Cup can't fail to have seen these cars herring round Goodwood Circuit, and often getting the better of the bigger vehicles like the Ford Galaxies and Mustangs. One of my favourite manufacturers, Riley, which is a very proud Coventry firm, sadly sort of almost dissolved when it was taken over by BMC, but this is just an elegant sporting saloon. I would say probably too racy to be a bank manager's car, but perhaps a family solicitor or even a dentist. You can see this is a car with panache, and it looks like it's doing 90 miles an hour even standing still. Just have a little look at the instrument cluster. So again, this beautiful Art Deco style center console with a large clock, speedometer, and then the essential gauges like water temperature, petrol. 3.5 litre V8 P6. Someone will probably correct me, but I think this is a tobacco leaf brown. These are wonderful cars, direct competitor. Well, the P6 itself a direct competitor to the Rover 2000. Of course, in this guise, it's powered by the Buick V8 engine, Mark II, and this is an interesting example. You can see the difference in the grills between these two cars. I sort of prefer the grille and the front end of the early model. This later one has the bonnet bulges, which sort of hint at the V8 engine underneath. What I particularly like about this one is the spare wheel mounted on the boot lid to give you more luggage space. I'm not quite sure what that does for rear view visibility. Have a little look at the interior here. Again, thin steering wheel, beautifully elegant, lovely period radio in there, and again this sort of sumptuous interior, and then automatic transmission. Yeah, beautiful. Another modern classic here, and I have to say, when these first came out, this was a car that I really lusted after. This is the Volvo 480 Turbo. It could only come from the 1980s really. This one has an automatic transmission, but the origami angular style of this car, pop-up headlights, and again two-tone paintwork really make it a distinct car. It sort of reminds me a little bit of the Honda, I think it's the Aerodeck, which was a sort of similar shape, and sort of one of the last of the wedge design cars from that period. Just have a look. This is the 3.4 litre version, wire wheels. Most people nowadays sort of equate these with bank robbers' cars, but these were sporting saloons, and seriously fast, sophisticated cars. Beautiful shape, and yes, I think if there's a car that I've seen so far in the show that I'd like to take home, I think it would be this Mark II Jag. That's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love the opening quarter lights, front and rear. Motor Litre steering wheel in this one, but beautiful walnut cappings and dash, and yeah, sumptuous seats with little sort of picnic tables at the back. Another Ford. So this is badged as an 8 horsepower. I'm afraid I don't know very much about these cars, other than this is just immaculate, and it looks like it's just come out of a factory. Yes, this is a fabulous car which sort of screams 1980s, and car of choice for architects, I'm told. Next to that we've got little Ford Poplar, and beautifully detailed. I'm talking about bank managers earlier. And I can't help feeling that the Rover P4 is the ultimate bank manager's car. Really, again, like this colour scheme, cream, and yes, it's what every bank manager should be. It's a sort of staid, upright. You can imagine someone who owns a car like this being pretty firm about your overdraft if you had to go and see them. Lovely upholstery inside. This has been beautifully done, and again the instrument panel and dashboard and steering wheel are just magnificent. I also like the way the gear lever is canted towards the driver. Yeah, lovely car. Great shape. Again, with these sort of wonderful curved wings at the front and back. We'll come around the front so we'll have a better look at this one. But that sort of screams Rust Belt America to me. And of course these were farm trucks and hard working vehicles, but that is beautiful. Last of the Roots group cars, I guess. So this is the Solara, and sort of represents for this country the end of the Hillman Sunbeam Humber marks. Very clean lines on this. There's something about it that sort of reminds me of the Mark II Ford Granada, but the colour scheme's an interesting one, and again, very smart, simple interior. Jaguar Saloon, again, this is a great colour with sort of magnolia hide interior, and next to that a Triumph Spitfire 1500. So again, this is about 1979, one of the last of the Triumph sports cars, sadly, but typical Triumph walnut dashboard. This one obviously has overdrive with a switch on the gear lever. Nicely presented, and the mini light style wheels look really good on this one. I rather like this Land Rover camper. Great paintwork on this car. That's just fantastic. Yeah, great vehicle for travelling around the countryside and camping in. Just have a little look at the interior here. There's fabulous centre instrument panel, and then you've got the red and yellow top gear levers for high and low ratio drive and four-wheel drive. Presumably the bodywork was bespoke for work as an ambulance. Whether it was a military vehicle beforehand or not, I don't know. For this 911 Carrera from about 1978, again, Cabriolet. These would have been expensive and very sought after cars, and I particularly like the ducktail on this one. And then a sort of burgundy interior here, but very much cars for the sort of the bankers and masters of the universe at the time. More modern Carrera S. You may just recognise this car we're looking at here, but next to Tess we've got this fantastic Bentley, and what can I say? Let's have a look at the front of this. Wonderful headlights. That is an imposing car, and then the cowled spare tyres. The sort of rear bustle boot, very, very smooth lines. And if you compare it to the Lagonda next to it, the Lagonda appears to be sort of narrower, but somehow a much more menacing car. But I think it's the low roof line that makes it look aggressive, and as though it sort of means business. And this tall radiator here, again, enormous driving lamps. Yeah, just fantastic. And then this contrasts with the little Austin 7, and then another Teutonic masterpiece, the Mercedes SL. I like this powder blue colour scheme on this one. Again, it's a sort of 2+2 with room for small children or dog in the back. But again, I love the lines of these, particularly the sort of scallops along the bottom of the doors to stop the mud splashing up the doors, and also that sort of echoed in the rear tail lights as well. Great Volkswagen camper with a sort of dormer hinge roof. Yeah, fantastic cars, and just a brilliant piece of engineering design in simplicity, but everything you need. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this outing today to the Debach Airfield. Wonderful cross section of cars, really spanning the sort of era from sort of pre-war 1930s cars right up to the end of the millennium. Some equally impressive military vehicles, and again, I apologise for my ignorance. At some point this year I'm going to sit down and actually brush up on my knowledge on vintage military trucks. But it's a great little venue, not too many cars, but somehow the intimacy of the event sort of makes it all the more special, and just another example of the kind of fortune we have in Suffolk, of lots of these little meets and owners willing to bring their cars out and to use them the way they were intended. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.